who's never even ever felt the smallest momentary flicker of fear in their life? Everyone has a fear of something. What kind of fears did you bring with you to church this morning? Or maybe you're thinking, I'm not a fearful person. What do I have to be afraid of? Now, it's uncomfortable to think about our fears or to be afraid, so often we'll rename it or deny it. We'll call it something like anxiety, worry, stress, but they are all still there. It's all a fear. They still motivate our actions or, in some cases, our inactions. Our fears could be about our health. They could be about our finances. Maybe it's about spiders. Maybe it's about small spaces. Maybe it's public speaking. Any fear is possible. Now, it's normal to feel fear from time to time, and sometimes it's pretty useful to feel afraid. Your body prepares to either fight or get out of there. But what about instead of fear lasting for just a few moments, what about when it unpacks its bags and settles in for the long haul? What about when it starts to dictate how you live your life? Fear has potential to hold us captive and stop us from living in the fullness and life that Christ has called us to. Now, Adam told God, right after the fall of mankind and our first sin, Adam told God that he was afraid because he was naked. Yet the Bible constantly is telling us not to be afraid. As a matter of fact, did you know 365 times in Scripture, God speaks to fear? Now, for me, using Bullet Creek math, that's one time a day God can remind me, don't be fearful, every day of the year, and then you just start over. Don't be afraid. Every day, don't be afraid, God tells us. God doesn't want us to live our life in fear. He wants us to be set free. So this morning, I'd like to look at how we can be set free from living a life of fear and live a life of fullness. Now, this has been a journey that I've been on, and I am still on. And I'm going to share with you a couple of my own stories and look at a story and some scriptures from the Bible to help us unpack what we should do in the face of fear so that we might be set free. Jesus calmed the storm at sea and can calm the storm in our lives. Right? One of my favorite Bible verses, actually. It's found in Matthew 8. And that's where Jesus was on a boat with his disciples, right? Christ had been preaching all day. They got on the boat, and Jesus falls asleep. And then a huge, unexpected storm blows up around the boat. And the disciples are absolutely terrified. Many of them were fishermen, so they must have sailed in all sorts of conditions. But this storm scared them, which tells us how extreme that storm must have been. They panicked and they woke Jesus up. We're all going to die. Jesus then asked them the question, why are you afraid? Well, this seems to be a rather ridiculous question from me. Why are you afraid, right, mankind? It must have been obvious that they were afraid. In fact, I expect Jesus had to yell that, why are you afraid, at the top of his lung to beat the whistling winds and trying to not fall out of the boat of the storm that they were in as they were rocking the boat so violently. But he still asks them why they're afraid. Well, to me, their fear seemed completely rational. They were also facing death by shipwreck. But look who was on the boat with them. The Creator, the one who has authority over the whole earth. He's on board. The Creator is on that boat. He's in the storm with them. There's no need to be afraid. Then he tells the waves to be still. He tells the wind to shut up. And the disciples are left absolutely amazed, wondering what kind of man that they were sharing that boat with. By calming the storm, Jesus gives them a glimpse of who he is. The significance of the storm pales in comparison to the significance of who Christ is. The problem with fear is that we focus so much on the fear that we lose sight of Jesus Christ and what he has the power to do. So here are a few of my fears, a few of my storms. When I was a little person, about 4, my sister Dawn, Tink, was about 6 years of age. The mama worked full-time, as she had since high school for the most part, at the Midland Hospital. So Dawn and I would stay at my Uncle Don and Aunt Annabelle's house, right between the pine tree and the garage, right there. That's Dop Road, or the Curtis compound. So we're over at the Curtis compound, and I vividly remember this storm in my 4-year-old life. I'm standing at the window. Mom would take Dawn and I in the house, drop us off, console me a little bit. Dawn was running, playing with whatever was there to play with Aunt Annabelle had ready to go. But I didn't want her to leave. I didn't want my mom going out the door. I remember as she climbed in the car, having left the house, getting into the car, a Chevy 2, climbing in that Chevy 2, backing out the driveway, and I'm coming unglued. I'm standing I remember it, 4 years old. I'm standing at the window screaming my head off. She backed out onto Dop Road, headed to M30 so she could go into the hospital. I would follow her down every window of the house, screaming, "Come back." I would finally settle down a little bit. My Uncle Don got after me. That's where I acquired the name Bullhead. "Get over here, Bullhead." I would settle down, but yeah, my fear. Was she going to come back for us? Were we going to be on the Dop Road Curtis compound for the rest? Couldn't handle that. Huge fear for me. So at 4, where's my faith? Well, I could have found it in Psalms 5, verse 3. "When I'm afraid, I put my trust in you." I remember as a youth, I'm about a dozen years old, so that would have made Tink about 14. My mom called us together in the living room at 1469 South Meridian, about 300 yards from here. Brought my sister into the living room and said that she was going to be having a girl surgery, that they were going to be doing some testing. Now, I remember laying back across the sofa, the back of the sofa, and I remember those words and the way that she continued to comfort us through how that was going to work. She wasn't out of bounds on any of it. She was very calm in describing what it was, but I remember laying across the back of that sofa and felt the howling winds. I felt giant waves. My boat was rocking. What does this mean? How sick is she? What will we do? Again, my mom's calm in preparing us for what was next was always a comfort. However, the unknown brought on several restless nights for me. Where's my faith? Right there in Matthew 6, verse 4. "Therefore, do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble." I'm going to blow through about 40 years and take you to my adulthood. 7 months ago, my employer went through a reorganization. So nearly 30 positions were going to be eliminated. Now, after 17 years on the job, was I expendable? Was my organization headed in a different direction? It's only 6 weeks till Christmas. Where's my faith? I found it in Jeremiah 29, verse 11. For I know I have the plans for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future of hope. Mid-January 2020, COVID-19 takes its global place on stage, and everybody's lives have and are and will be changed in an instant. No school, no work, not being with your children as they give birth to your first grandchild. No church. No haircuts. You know what I'm saying? No. Fear. Yeah. So where's my faith? Right there in Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Mid-May, 6 weeks ago, a 500-year flood hits mid-Michigan. Families evacuated, homes destroyed. My workplace is underwater. Communities and businesses washed away. Lives changed forever. Where's our faith? We can find it in Isaiah. Chapter 43, verse 2. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers, they shall not overwhelm you. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. In the last 30 days, racial and social unrest. Weapons on our streets and cities are being demolished. Police and entire communities are being targeted. Rioting and death is taking place in our parks. Where's our faith? Where's my faith in the way the world has been and becoming? Well, Isaiah 54:17. No weapon that is fashioned against you shall succeed, and you shall confute every tongue that rises against you in judgment. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and their vindication from me, declares the Lord. Now, as most of you are aware, my sister and I have been richly blessed to have grown up in a home full of faith. Christ's teachings were not just spoken, read, and sang in our house. They were and are exampled. That's exactly how Christ taught his disciples and is trying to teach us as people of faith on what we need to know. Jesus never forces his way in. Let's go back to that boat. In the middle of a major storm, Christ stayed asleep, so the disciples had the choice to wake him up or not. Revelations 3:20 says that, "Here I am, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person and they with me." So Jesus isn't one for pushing his way in to be invited. It's about choices. He waited for the disciples to ask. He waits for us to ask. He waits for us to choose him. After Jesus calms the storm, the disciples aren't left saying, "What a terrible storm." They were left saying, "What a man! Creation obeys him." When we turn to Jesus in the midst of our storms, our focus shifts from staring at that storm to staring at God. If we're looking at him, then we aren't looking at the storm. If we are overwhelmed in his perfect love, in which 1 John chapter 4 promises to cast out all fear, then we stop being overwhelmed by the storm. As the song goes, turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full into his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. In preparing over the last couple of days to share with you today a few of my life's storms, I've realized over time that when my focus was shifted and placed no longer on the storm, but it was placed on God, who was with me in that storm, bit by bit, I began to find my calm in him. I still have storms, yep, but I do know that God is with me in the boat. And I make sure that I turn my eyes upon him rather than staring out at the storm. Jesus says, stop being afraid. Just keep believing. That's Jesus' message to every one of us. What are your fears that you brought with you this morning? Jesus says, stop being afraid. Just keep believing. Just keep on trusting and living faithfully. Let me tell you what I also know to be true, and that is that the church, as Christ's body in this world, we are to speak Jesus' message to others, to family and friends, to strangers, to anyone, everyone that's living in fear. We are to say, stop being afraid, just keep believing. We are to speak Jesus' name with his authority into hopeless and helpless and fear-filled situations. And then, like Jesus, we are to act to walk alongside them as Jesus' hands and feet. We have the power God-given to alter the condition of people's lives, to bring hope, to bring help, to bring that love that will cast out fear. I just came across these words this morning as I was doing my devotional, so I added them in. God was still working on me at 5:30 this morning. Rely on the Lord, for only he can turn a mess into a message, a test into testimony, a trial into triumph, and what's broken into something beautiful. I think we've got some opportunity there over the last several months. I think they were all cited there. As I conclude this morning, would you turn to someone who's next to you, near you right now, and say these words? Don't be afraid. Keep on believing.
Don't be afraid. Keep up.
May our God continue to keep, heal, comfort, and protect each and every one of you. Page 4 of your take-home hymnal.